Our first speaker is Petros Constantinou, who's coordinator of CAREFA, which is a movement against racism and fascism in Greece. And just before he starts speaking, I'd like to point out that there are materials to support CAREFA, badges and all sorts of things, that money goes directly to the Greek comrades in fighting Golden Dawn. So please, that's at the back, please, before you leave the meeting, look at that. And he is also a councillor in the Athens municipality. So, Petros, thank you.
So, comrades, the fight against fascism and the far right in Europe is extremely important. You may learn that in Austria there is a rerun of the election, so the fascists got their way to contest again for the presidency. You know that in France, Le Pen, especially in the last year, was presented that he can achieve the same. In Germany, we had the alternative for Deutschland getting electoral results. And in Greece, we have the Golden Dawn having the 7%. However, this is the one picture, the one part of the picture going around Europe and what's happening with the fascist and the far-right parties. Because on the same time, we have mass resistance. Will it be in Austria? The last year, we had a big anti-racist movement, and there was resistance against them. Also, in France, the workers' resistance is amazing. It is opening the possibility of fighting and beating the fascists. And in Germany, a new coalition has been formed to fight against the alternative for Deutschland. I will speak more concretely about the Golden Dawn, the neo-Nazis who presented themselves as the unbeatable force and the big example of all the fascists and the far right in Europe at the start of the 2012, when they entered the Greek parliament with 7% and 17 MPs. So really, the picture of what is happening now it's very important. It is a picture that we have the possibility to stop them and to smash them. The last week, it was the trial of the Golden Dawn in Greece. 68 of them are on trial the last year, more than half of the leadership, a big part of their parliamentary group. And you could see the picture inside the court, the lawyer who was leading the defense from their part, reading a leaflet of CAREFA, of the anti-fascist movement, describing how dangerous it is for them to be there and standing in the court because there was a demonstration outside and because the general mood in Greek society is against them. What had happened really is that the last 2 and 3 years in Greece, the Golden Dawn came in trial after a huge explosion of the movement. We have to remind that in 2013, after 2 years of racist attacks, pogroms in the neighborhoods, and their effort to control whole of areas, they murdered Pavlos Fyssas, and this opened the way for a huge explosion of the anti-fascist movement. There was a big general strike and a mass demonstration to their headquarters that forced the government to move for a crackdown against the neo-Nazis. So this was the turning point in Greece, and even with all the crisis that went on, and finally with the victory of Syriza, they couldn't break from the isolation that this anti-fascist movement threw them the last 2 and now I would say the last 3 years. And this is very important because now in Greece, with the Syriza government and all the compromises and all the betrayals, they try to open a way. They try to exploit the fact that 1 million refugees came in Greece, and to say, okay, we present a different approach to this issue, how we can solve it, we can stop them, and we can stop all this invasion, as they call it. The reality is that because of the rise of the anti-racist movement, this didn't let them the space to move. They try to build in an Islamophobic manner, saying that stop the Islamization of Europe. They tried to attack the places where the refugees were coming, and this effort was defeated in the center of Athens, in the Piraeus areas, and in the islands. So they were isolated by mass action against them. And what is really the problem is that it's racism, that it is the base where they try to get on again. And it is a shame that the Greek government, the government of Syriza, signed, after they signed the new austerity package, for which they said, okay, we are blackmailed and we are forced to do it, they signed the agreement between the European Union and Turkey. And they were very proud of that. Alexis Tsipras said that this was the European solution to the refugee problem, that the Turkey is responsible to stop the refugees of coming in Greece. And this was a shame because the mass movement, the mass solidarity to the refugees opened the borders. I mean, you could see people going to the islands, you could see people going to the coast and participating in saving the people inside the sea, saving the people, giving them shelter, moving them, breaking the law that the refugees should stay in the islands isolated, and they came to Piraeus and they continued their way to the northern border of Macedonia, and thousands of people were collecting money, clothes, giving support, and of course they're giving political support to this movement that was opening the borders. And that was very important as a support to the refugees who are eager to do it. These were the refugees of the Syrian revolution fighters, so they knew how to organize collectively, how they can resist the police attacks and so on, and they were ready to also to coordinate with the Greek anti-racist and the workers' movement. And it was amazing that each trade union, one by one, all around Greece, gave support. 85% of the population supported the refugees, and 55% of the population made something to support the refugees physically. They gave money, they gave clothes, they opened their houses, and so on. And so this is very important to understand why the Golden Dawn is still isolated. But the problem is, again, the government and the police. You could see that when they try again to have their open rallies in the cities, the police was there. I mean, Syriza government not even cut the relation between the neo-Nazis and the police apparatus who supported the pogroms, who were present in the murder of Pavlos Fissas, but they gave them the order to cover again these thugs to come on the street. And this is really a shame. And the scandal is also on the political level. I mean, you can have the president of the Greek parliament, obviously a Syriza member, arguing that in the Greek parliament we have 300 MPs. All of them, they have equal votes, which means that they are including the Nazis. And they were speaking about the prospect to vote for a constitutional change, changes in the constitution, changes in the electoral law. And they want to count as equal the vote of the Nazis. This is really a scandal, because the anti-fascist movement is arguing that they are not a legal political party. They are a Nazi criminal organization. And that is how they are now in the court. So everybody who stands outside this is giving support to the Nazis in the court. And it's really a shame. But really there is mass resistance, and the anti-fascist movement is going on. A group of lawyers managed to be present in the trial as political prosecution. And this is very important, because now we managed to bring the trial inside the center of Athens. For the last 14 months, it was in a prison, very remote, and we had a big campaign and a big disagreement with the Minister of Justice, Syriza professor, who was saying, okay, no, we cannot do it. So we move it, and now having the trial in the center of Athens, it's very easy to open the case. I mean, all this campaign for the trial is very important because week by week we have all the facts, how they acted, how the police was supporting them, that they're really a Nazi criminal organization. And this really is helping us to build a force to stop them. It is very important during the period of the crisis of capitalism, during a period that we have the political collapse of the old parties, the neoliberal and the social democrats, not to leave them the space to express the anger by using the racism of the governments. And it is 2 times important not to let them any space when you have a left government, like the government of Syriza, who is making all these compromises. We don't want to leave them any space for investing in desperate people. And it's really very important for this fight to go on and to win. But also, it is very important to build an alternative. We don't have only to build the fight against fascism, to isolate them, to organize demonstrations whenever they try to make their poisonous speeches and actions against the refugees. We have also to build resistance totally against austerity, against all the problems that the new packages bring to the workers, the privatization, and so on. And so, for us, it's very important 2 issues. One is to go on with the fight in solidarity with the refugees. We are against the European Union and Turkey agreement. We want to abolish that. We want the opening of the borders. We want the closure of the detention centers that Syriza opened. We want an end to the deportation to Turkey. And also, we want to open our cities. We want equal rights for all the refugees and the migrants who are coming in Greece. It is amazing that there are people that they are occupying buildings inside the center of Athens and say, we want them in our neighborhoods. There was a movement by the teachers, and the last weeks they register themselves, the school kids, in primary schools and in higher schools, and forcing the government that they must follow this. I mean, the Syriza government, they didn't announce what they're going to do with 20,000 children who are now stopping in Greece. But the mass movement is going on. So all these struggles to open the cities, to open the borders, are very important to stop the Nazis. But also it is important to build an alternative. What happened with the Brexit for us is very inspirational. It's the continuation of the no vote of the Greek people last year. And there is no chance to say that, okay, all this vote is a reactionary vote, is opening the way for the racist. We have to build our alternative, an alternative which is against the European Union of the bosses of racism, of war and austerity. We have to build based on the workers' answers to the capitalist crisis. And this is very important. We want to create hope to these millions of people. It's amazing that in Greece of crisis, when you have 1.5 million unemployed, to have a mass solidarity for the refugees, this is hope, this is where we can build, and we are very optimistic that we can smash the Nazis, but also smash capitalism and Britain.
Our next speaker I'm happy to introduce is David Albrich, who's a leading member of the International Socialist Group in Austria.
Comrades, I think we're experiencing a massive turmoil all over Europe in the last days. Just a few days after the Brexit referendum, the Austrian High Court cancelled the results of the second round of the presidential elections in Austria. These were the elections where the fascist candidate from the Freedom Party got narrowly defeated, and this isn't a real mess we are in now. Just a month ago, when the second round of the presidential elections took place, and Norbert Hofer, it was the fascist candidate for president, was narrowly defeated. All eyes, I think, were focused at that time on Austria. And one could think of a very horrible situation in Austria, where when we just think of that, not just that this second round of the elections are now repeated in the end of September, but also that the fascist Freedom Party could enter the government, could take office in the next general elections in maybe 2017 or 2018. But we have also experienced a massive movement, as Petros already mentioned, a massive movement in solidarity with refugees over the last year. So there is, of course, on the one side, big threats and challenges for us and for the left, but at the same side, there are huge chances. And I want to start by saying that this cancellation of the elections now the situation is very alarming for us, because it could allow the fascist party to build up an activist machine that could really be dangerous, that could build up a street movement that could really be dangerous for democracy. And I will come back to that a little bit later. I want to make no mistake about that. The Freedom Party in Austria is not just a right-wing populist party or something. We call it a masked fascist party, like in France you see Le Pen and the Front National, or other parties that you may call Eurofascist in type. And I want to argue that the smartest fascists have always used a dual strategy in building. They try, on the one side, building a respectable electoral movement by hiding their true intentions. But at the same time, these fascists are subordinating the electoral movement to building the party, forming cadres. So in contradiction to right-wing populist parties, masked fascists, they use racism to more than just winning elections or winning gains in parliament and pushing governments and so on. But they try to use it to radicalize new layers on the electoral level, to bring them nearer to the core of the party and to build cadres. And in the end, to build an instrument that secured Hitler's success, namely a stormtrooper type street fighting organization that is able to spread terror in migrant districts against left-wingers, against the opposition outside parliament. And this dual strategy of the fascists is not just a one-way street, that you always have this fascist street wing in the streets, but it's very contradictory. And it's good to keep in mind that the stormtroopers of the Nazi Party were not an official party of the Nazi Party until 1926. And even then, they should march first of all unarmed. And it was not until the stormtroopers were made an official auxiliary police in Prussia after the Nazis already took power in 1933, that widespread terror became normal. And let's come back to the elections in Austria, and why I want to argue that the Freedom Party is a fascist party in its core. The Freedom Party could, of course, and there were debate in Austria, they could have run a more liberal candidate for the presidency. However, they decided to run Norbert Hofer, who is member of a fascist student corporation that has close links with the Nazi machine, with the Third Reich. And it's used, the Freedom Party used the election campaign to hold rallies where supporters and the rallies sang First World War songs about killing their enemies. So this is how they mold together their cadres. And now it was the Freedom Party that after the election that contested the results. And their primary aim was not to repeat the election, to win it again, but their aim was to lump, to merge together all these new layers and to radicalize them. Actually, the Freedom Party already started weeks before the election to talk about electoral fraud. They have already been, since then, been successful in lumping together like the bigwigs in Brussels and the bureaucrats, together with the radical left, the lying media, in German it's called the Lügenpresse, the Greens, the Social Democrats, feminists, Bilderbergers, and so on. And they created a kind of atmosphere where the system or the others, they stole us then the victory. Okay, just 3 weeks after the elections, a neo-Nazi group closely linked to the Freedom Party, but independent in their political organization, the Identity Movement, tried to march through a district, a migrant district in Vienna, and they used, for this march, they used the slogan, "It's not our president," after the fascist was narrowly defeated. So we already saw that independent Nazi organizations try to link themselves to the Freedom Party and use this to build on the streets. But obviously there are obstacles to build a fascist street movement. At present, I would argue there is no widespread acceptance for these band of thugs on the streets. But however, the Freedom Party is constantly working to overcome this difficulty. Okay, on the other side, despite this maybe catastrophic outlook that we can see an activist machine from the Freedom Party that could build a street movement, Austria has been a stronghold of the anti-racist movement over the last year, and it has shown to be one of the strongest in Europe since last summer, when hundreds of thousands of refugees crossed the borders and came to Austria and Germany. And since these massive protests in summer, we had, like, on the 3rd of October, 70,000 people marching in Vienna in solidarity with refugees. Since then, we had several successful mobilizations against the Freedom Party, who wanted to organize protests against asylum seekers. We stopped them from marching in the streets. We had a huge demonstration on the 19th of March. On the 19th of March, on the International Day of Protest, we were demonstrating with 16,000 people again in Vienna. And this anti-racist movement, this strong anti-racist movement, put a lot of political pressure on the very weakish coalition government of the Social Democrats and the Tories. First, the much-hated Home Secretary of Austria, Johanna Mikl-Leitner, had to step down because she wanted to relieve the pressure against the government. And then a few weeks later, the youth organizations of the Social Democratic Party toppled our federal chancellor and the head of the Social Democratic Party. So this pressure that is coming from the anti-racist movement is very real. What should we do? Just short. I think first of all, the key moment is mobilizing the solidarity with refugees. It's easy to overlook that the mass of ordinary people who were active all across Europe were actually helping in the last months, and these people had no political representation. So when you just look at parliamentary politics, it's easy to not see this kind of force. In the second round of the presidential election in Austria, every second voter for the rival candidate of the Green Party, every second voter said he did so because he wanted to prevent the fascist candidate from taking office. And I think this is a massive base for building a movement in the streets. Second, of course, we have to build an alternative. This is very, I would say, at the moment, not really possible. What we can do actually in Austria, we cannot mobilize the anger against the establishment. And it is very tragically because the Freedom Party can gain a lot of votes from working class areas. We had polls that said 75% of all opponents to the European Union were collected by the Freedom Party, and we can again see that now in the coming election campaigns that this will be an issue. And the Green candidate, the rival candidate, really built himself up in defending the European Union. So we have here this kind of tension and the debate inside the left. But third, what we have to do is we have to split the fascists, to confront them in the streets. The Freedom Party is constantly balancing between their need for respectability and their support for racist and openly mobilizations on the streets, the dual strategy I was talking about. And when we confront them in the streets, calling them fascists, this always creates tensions between their leadership and newly won members and so on. So we obviously can't make up for the scandalous crimes against the people committed by the mainstream politicians, but what we can actually do is we can seriously damage the early efforts of building a fascist movement in the streets in Austria.
Thank you. Our last speaker is Volkart, and he's a member of Marx 21 and Der Linke, the Left Party in Germany.
Hello. My teacher Adorno once asked the question, can there be poetry after Auschwitz? I want to ask the question, of course there can be, no. But I want to ask the question, can there be fascism after Auschwitz? Yes, there is. And why do I ask this question is we have, fascism has a problem after 45. The name is Auschwitz. And that's why fascism doesn't come out openly. Some of them come out openly as followers of Hitler and of the old fascism, but most of the more successful fascist parties in Europe come out in disguise. And therefore it's not always easy to make the difference between right-wing populism and fascism. And we have to confront it. We have at the moment a new party in Germany, a very successful party, a right-wing party, which started as a right-wing populist party in 2013, and it is developing at the moment into a fascist party. And it is not easy to prove this, but it is very, very important. I have been part of three big successful anti-fascist movements myself. The first one was in '69. It was called Ein Adolf war genug. It was one Adolf was enough, because the leader of the fascist party, his first name was Adolf at the time, Adolf von Thadden, leader of the NPD. And the second one was the Republican. They were defeated by the student movement actually in '69. In '79 there was a Rock Against Racism sort of event in Germany. It was called Rock Against Rechts, again against the NPD. The leader was a new one then. And it was defeated by big mass mobilization in the streets, mainly in Frankfurt. 50,000 people stopped the mass march there. And the third one, successful movement, was against the Republikaner, a newly built, in the 80s, newly built fascist party by a man called Schönhuber. He was a leading SS member in the war. This was in a way easy because the leaders still were members of the old fascist parties and their organizations. But nowadays, with the AfD, you have people like Högge and Poggeburg. You wouldn't know them even. They are between 25 and 35 years old or 40 years old. They have no past in a way that you could say, yes, you have been with them before, so why should you not be a fascist now? So, and this makes it even more difficult. And also what I said before, that the AfD, the Alternative für Deutschland, Alternative for Germany, that's the name, they started as a right-wing conservative populist party, like UKIP, I would say, very much like UKIP it was in 2013, but it changed very rapidly. And how do we recognize it? To my experience would say, firstly, it's personal or organizational continuity with fascism. Fascism in Germany had 1945, the fascist party had 7.5 million members. With the additional SS and SR membership, they had about 10 million convinced fascists in the end of the war. They didn't just disappear. They were quite well organized there all the time, all the years after the war. Not all of them, many of them withdrew from politics, most of them actually, but there were tens of thousands of them trying to rebuild their movement. And so there is a continuity which goes right until today into the AfD, and we have to prove this. And the second is the other important point where I recognize them is they belittle or deny the Holocaust to a certain degree, at one point or the other. And the third one is programmatic pragmatism, I would call it. The NPD in the 60s and 70s was not a racist party. They were racist in their program in a way, but they would argue very strongly along anti-communist lines. They were anti-communists mainly. That was their program in the elections. They came out with programs for unity, German unity against the communists in the East and so on. And the Republikaner of the 80s and 90s were anti-foreigner, anti-migrant party. They were a racist party, contrary to the NPD in the 60s and the 70s. And the newly built AfD now is drawing heavily on Islamophobia. It's an anti-Islamist party, I would say, their main thing. There's also against anti-refugees, anti-asylum party. This plays also an important part. But since the numbers of refugees have gone down since January, actually, they turned quite consciously away from the anti-refugee program to anti-Islamophobia. Their main program is now against Islam, building mosques and so on. When I say it's a programmatic pragmatism, there's a very nice piece of Trotsky when he describes how Hitler became what he was then in the 20s, and he says he went into meetings and whenever there was a big applause, he took this piece of his speech up and kept it, and the other pieces where he didn't get applause, he just sort of forgot about it. He was very pragmatic about it. So I think this is an important point. They don't invent those ideologies, they find them. Society has it there. The ruling class is responsible for racism. Racism is a ruling class ideology constructed and built quite consciously to split the working class. Ruling intellectuals are ruling class intellectuals like Richard Wagner or Treitschke in the 80s of the 19th century built anti-Semitism from the top of the society. There was a man called Sarrazin. He is a leading social democratic member of the Social Democratic Party, writing a book in 2011, Deutschlands Weg. Deutschland schafft sich ab. Deutschland is abolishing it. Germany is not abolishing itself. So by getting too many foreigners, mainly Muslim people, into Germany. So this means that the war on terror really built the ground for the AfD and this new racist party, and the leader of the fascist wing. So I would very much argue that the AfD is in the process of transforming itself from a right-wing populist party into a fascist party. And the reason why the fascists are so successful is that there is a mass movement on the streets, a racist movement called Pegida. Pegida was built in the start in Dresden. It spread to many towns. In most of the towns, they met a lot of resistance. In Frankfurt, for example, they tried to build Fragida, Frankfurt against Islamic development of Europe or something. It's a short version of that. There were, for 3 months, every Monday, counter demonstrations of between 800 and 20,000 people in the streets. So after 3 months, they gave up. So this happened in in most of the towns, actually, it happened. The biggest success was in Leipzig, where 20,000 people stopped it spreading from Dresden to Leipzig. This was a big success at the time. But at the same time, in many small villages and medium-sized villages, mainly in East Germany, Pegida has been successful and is still going on, this movement. And the AfD, this fascist wing, quite consciously works together with Pegida, and they chuck out the leading. In 2014, there was 2015, there was a split of the AfD. The founders, Lucke and Henkel, they were coming from the conservative, the Christian Democratic Party, were chucked out of the party, and the more radicals took over. But still, the more radicals, I mean, there is still a right-wing populist leadership. In the 13 or so strong leadership, I would say 4 or 5 are fascists. The rest are right-wing populists, more right-wing than the founders, actually, more racist. So it's moving quickly to the right. And the danger of there is a problem here. We have the leading member of the left party in Parliament, the parliamentary faction of the left party, Sarah Wagenknecht, hold a speech she's a very good speaker, actually, and she hold the last speech in the meeting in Magdeburg on the party conference, where I was a delegate from Frankfurt. And there she said the AfD is just a right-wing neoliberal party like the Conservatives and parts of Social Democratic Party. Now, if you term it like this, you wouldn't make a special effort to beat the AfD. Then Merkel is much more dangerous in this sense than Höcke or other leaders of the AfD. So the party congress took a decision that we should demonstrate on the 3rd of September. I just have to add, Marx 21, when the AfD got up in last autumn, we said we have to do something. And so we started to build a national anti-racist movement, Aufstehen gegen Rassismus. We had a national conference with 600 people in Frankfurt, and we decided on this conference that there will be a train the trainers program where we educate 10,000, how you call them, not street fighters, but fighters in the Stammtischkämpfer. I don't know how you translate. Pub fighters against pub arguments. So, the second decision was we have a big mass rally on the 3rd of September in Berlin. Why? Because 2 weeks later there will be a Länder election in Berlin, and this will be of a very big significance. The AfD had between 10 and 24% in the Länder election, in the last 5 Länder elections, 4 of them in East Germany, 1 in West Germany, but even in West Germany, they got 15% in Baden-Württemberg. And if I compare it with the NPD and the Republikaner, which I spoke before, I would say the AfD is much more dangerous. Why? Because capitalism is in crisis, and much bigger crisis than it was at the time, and at the same time, the left, in a way, is not recognize the danger which is coming up, and I want to end actually by giving the argument against this mobilization of the AfD, which Sarah Wagenknecht again is sort of very popular for, because she argued along this line in the meeting in Magdeburg, in the party conference, and she said there that as long as there is unemployment and crisis and deprivation of people through capitalism and crisis, you mustn't let too many people in. This is exactly what she says, yeah, because it leads to racism. There is a mechanical analysis, I would say, between crisis and the experience of crisis and racism. Crisis leads to racism. Now, I know that the Social Democratic Party before 1933 just argued the other way around, that there's an automatic development from crisis to socialism. Both is wrong. There's no automatic thing between racist or fascism and capitalist crisis, or the other way around to socialism. It all depends on the will and the organization of the left and the socialists, how they confront it and how they build against it. Thank you.
Okay, my name's David. I'm one of the leading activists of Unite Against Fascism and Racism in Catalonia, and speaking here as a member of In Lucha, the sister organisation of the SWP. 6 years ago in Catalonia, the fascists were growing, disguised fascists with suits. They nearly got into the Catalan parliament. In 2011, they got 67 councillors across Catalonia. From In Lucha, we raised the initiative of building Unite Against Fascism and Racism, and it's been a massive success. We got 500 organisations involved, all the left parties, all the unions, youth organisations, neighbours organisations. In the last municipal elections in 2015, they fell from 67 to 8 councillors, and the only 8 they got were in the places where the left said, we don't need Unite Against Fascism, we'll do something else. It's an example that what you've done in Britain, what the comrades are doing across Europe, that works. The people have other theories about other things to do. Tell them, where does it work? It doesn't work. Radical anti-fascism on its own doesn't work. NGOs on their own doesn't work. United anti-fascism does work. Because of that, in the last year, our local groups have been able to do other things. For example, Stop Islamophobia campaign. We had a social forum against Islamophobia last February. It was a big success, 400 people, with people of all types, from radical LGBT activists through to representatives from the local mosque. Recently, we've been working around refugees issue with a sister organisation called Stop Mare Mortum, and we just brought out 50,000 leaflets saying protect yourself against the contagion of racism. So it's combating the racist arguments around refugees. This says we need safe passage for people who want to come to Europe as refugees, whether it's because of the things that appear in the Convention on Refugees or because of climate crisis, because of poverty, because of gender violence, which don't count as reasons to be racism. This has been accepted by the Socialist Party in Catalonia because we've been working with them for 6 years and we've won people over from all those different spaces. United anti-fascism works. It helps us build networks. It helps us fight racism. But the first thing, we have to start building with people, and we also need to be revolutionary socialists, because this initiative didn't come from the soft left, it didn't come from the NGOs, it didn't come from radical antifas, it came from revolutionary socialists in this tradition.
The next speaker will be followed by the comrade at the front.
Hi, my name's Bobby Noyes and I'm from Southampton SWP, and this morning I was talking at a meeting about the fact that we had heard that a small fascist group, which called themselves Pie and Mash Squad, were coming to Southampton to recruit because they obviously thought this was a good opportunity. Our SWP branch is quite small, but we work with Unite Community, People's Assembly. I've been president of the Trades Council for some years, and so on and so forth. So we called a meeting of Unite Community, People's Assembly, the Trades Council. We had agreed that we would call a demonstration, but we were looking for more support. It was agreed that we would have a demonstration to stop these fascists from recruiting or standing on the streets at all. Hundreds of leaflets were produced. We've got a big Polish community. People went out to go round to the Polish community, to the shops and so on in their street, and say, you're welcome here, come to this demonstration. I came up yesterday and I was thinking, maybe we'll get 200. That would be really good if we get 200 against the fascists. My husband phoned me up at lunchtime. People might have heard my shrieks. 1,300 anti-fascists against 13 fascists, 5 of whom jumped back in their car and drove off straight away. The others had to be escorted down to the railway station by the police, with the anti-fascists following behind, chanting, singing, mocking them. We saw them onto the train station, and then my husband said, well, the march didn't want to disperse. We came back up to Guildhall Square in the centre of the city and stood there for about half an hour singing, chanting, fascists out, no fascists in Southampton. That was done at short notice by a small branch, but a branch which has worked consistently with anyone else who wants to fight against fascism. Comrades, you can all have that sort of success.
Hi, I'm a comrade from Vienna, Austria, and I just wanted to talk a little bit more about the situation there, because I think we all in this room can agree that the left across Europe faces huge challenges, and especially in Austria as well, similar, I think, to the situation in Germany. I think established parties and also parts of the left don't really see the threat the FPÖ actually poses, and so we as revolutionary socialists have a big fight to win. But I think especially because of the rerun of the election, I think it means that we have to build on our strengths, and we've had massive successful mobilizations over the last year basically. So David already talked about that we as a basically really tiny socialist organization were able to build a broad united front in solidarity with refugees. We had the big demonstration on 3rd of October and other protests afterwards. But it's not just about building this united front, it's also about politicizing this united front. And that is, for example, how we were able in March, before the elections, to stop the Freedom Party of marching towards asylum seeker center in the outskirts of Vienna. It was exactly this united front that was before only in solidarity with refugees, where we fought for sort of the consciousness that we also have to fight the far right and that we have to stand against the Freedom Party if we want to show solidarity with refugees. So it's always an ongoing protest, an ongoing process, and we as revolutionary socialists, I think, have an important impact on that. And I think it's last point, I think it's important to merge those two movements, the movement in solidarity with refugees and the anti-fascist movement, because we were able to politicize the solidarity movement and at the same time, by mobilizing tens of thousands of people in solidarity, change the political mood and the political climate in Austria, so that last summer, for example, the FPÖ, Strache and Hofer were fucking quiet and didn't say anything because 70,000 people took to the streets of Vienna. And this is our strength, and we have to build on those successful mobilizations.
I want to take up the question about, is it stronger, the Europe that we had afterwards was a bastion of fighting against racism and fascism? Actually, it's not the case. If you want to know why 8,000 black and brown people at the bottom of the Mediterranean, it's because of Fortress Europe. And you have to understand also the other question is the growth of the far right and what stops them. M19 was not built by the institutions of the European Parliament. It was built in the streets of those individual countries where people came out into streets. And think about this. Golden Dawn, we were told, was the greatest threat that we faced and was building off austerity, was building off despair. Which organisation smashed or attempted to break Greek workers and Greek people who were suffering greater deprivation than people in Britain, and yet at the same time show sustenance towards refugees? Which organisation broke them? It was a European Parliament, it was a European government that did that. And the path for Golden Dawn to get stronger isn't done through Europe. Actually, it's done through the solidarity and the strikes that Petros talked about and the demonstrations that we show around M19. Hope and despair take flight from the same sky. And the question about the polarisation that is taking place inside Europe is only going to be strengthened by an understanding that the crisis that's taking place in Hungary at the moment, actually when you see the growth of Jobbik and Fidesz, and you see the way they're going, the idea that we can simply allow those Nazis to use that as a platform and say it's automatically progressive is very, very dangerous. The question of what we do after Brexit, what we do on the 16th of July, will be watched across the whole of Europe. Our international solidarity against those people like Le Pen is to take onto the streets to say we have an answer for both problems, for the despair that leads to fascism, but also against the racism and the Islamophobia, and uniting those into concrete organisations. We did in the BNP. That was our international duty. I saw Nick Griffin cry inside Barking and Dagenham, and I was glad for those tears in which we gave him. That's how you do it. Not through Europe, but in the streets of building anti-fascist and anti-racist organisations, and we've got to support our brothers and sisters as they do the same thing to make sure that we can struggle and change the world into a world in which fascism belongs in the dustbin of history.
After this comrade, there'll be the comrade at the end of the row there, yeah.
Hi, I'm Elise from the Polish organization of the IS Tendency. In Poland, we've, over the last year, more or less, we've seen an upsurge in the number of fascist and racist marches in the streets that we actually didn't have before on that scale. And we see a very clear link with the kind of filthy racism that has been spoken from the parliament, from the government party, but also from other mainstream parties, demonizing refugees, spreading real filth, and in that way encouraging the marches in the streets. The marches of a period, it was so strong that people on the left felt a real apathy and kind of fright towards the thing, and it's been encouraged by the government party directly. When one of the fascist organizations said that they wanted to start patrolling the streets, like fascists say they want to do against criminals or whatever, one of the leading government politicians said, yeah, that was a very healthy sign of young people being worried about crime in their city. When a fascist organization got a big hall in a university, they got to rent it to have their big rally, and the rector of the university wrote to foreign students in that town, said, keep inside, don't go out in the street in this period. So this has also led to an upsurge in attacks on the very, very few people in Poland that have a different skin color from the dominant skin color in the country. So all kinds of groups have been physically attacked in the street. So in the end, it was up to us, our organization, to take an initiative to create a very broad front and have an anti-racist demonstration and break through that apathy and that fear actually on the left. And we succeeded to gather quite broadly a very, very small Muslim community, the new left social democratic party that's been created in Poland, which is a new hope, lots of NGOs, and the biggest trade union, the Teachers Union in Poland. Yeah, so we didn't have the numbers that you had in the different other countries, but it's a very good beginning for creating a front.
Okay, this comrade will be followed by a French comrade called Denis at the back. If you know who you are, come after this comrade.
Look, all speakers talked about the political crisis currently underway. This has created massive polarisations between left and right that, as the speakers have talked about, we see this most profoundly around the question of the refugees. So there's us and loads of other people, millions of people that want to welcome refugees, and there's those racists and others that want to close the borders and use the refugee crisis to rip up racism. This is why I think we've done fantastic across Europe. We've heard from Austria, we've heard from Germany in welcoming refugees. 2 weeks ago, we took a convoy of 250 cars to show solidarity with refugees. On M19 across Europe, we responded well by taking thousands of people out on the streets to welcome refugees as well and drive back this racist offensive. But I just want to respond to the question Sabi asked, the question of Brexit. Does it feed into the hands of Marine Le Pen? The truth is, like any political crisis, it creates a polarisation. There's risk and opportunities for the left, like there is for Marine Le Pen. This is why I agree with what Petros said. Can we now build the alternative to drag both sides of that campaign together, or do we leave this to despair or to the kind of alternatives that Nigel Farage and Marine Le Pen presents? This is why I've just come from a demonstration, a Remain demonstration, a pro-EU event, not because I agree with those people, but I know on that demonstration there are people there motivated by anti-racism, and we want to work with the best of them, just like the people who voted Leave because of austerity, because they hate the Tories and because of racism. We want to pull these people together on July 16th. So I urge everyone to get out and build this demonstration and build the alternative. Otherwise, we do leave it to the likes of Le Pen and Farage. Thank you.
Okay, is Denis here? After this comrade will be the comrade over there. And I have to apologise now to all of the people who've put their hands up.
If there is a good example of polarization at the moment in Europe, I think it would be France. You know, it's a national front, and I think if we had to speak last year at Marxism, I think, you know, it would be much more depressed. Because National Front has in the last years won some local elections and now has some MPs, European MPs, some hundreds and hundreds of local and regional councillors. And through it, as some comrades argued, through electoral success, rebuilding really the kind of activist mass party. And just to be and to see what the consequence could be. You know, there were a poll for the last election, and, you know, the beginning of going inside even the state apparatus, and the police, active police at the last election voted at 70% for the National Front. That's one part on what side of the reality. What happened in the last months with the movement is what the left, because there's a responsibility of the left in France, what the left has not done has begun to happen inside the movement. It's not just a movement against the labor law. This movement, the slogan is against the labor law and its world. And inside this world, there is the threat of fascism. And so for the first time, for a long time, Philippot, the number 2 of the National Front, tried to organize a meeting in a very top university in Paris. And from the Place de la République occupied, there was an action launched from this place to go in this university and prevent Philippot, so the leader of the National Party, to speak. And it was successful, and the meeting was cancelled. In Lyon, because we talk a lot about the occupied place in Paris. In Lyon, because there are some places occupied in different cities in France. There were some places occupied in different cities. In Lyon, which is maybe the city where the far right, and not just National Front, but some fascist group, street fighters, are very strong. In Lyon, when the place was occupied, the fascists tried to attack it, and they were repelled by the young people coming in this place.
If
and
you could wind up, comrade.
I finish about, one of the slogans in this movement, in the streets, is tout le monde déteste la police. Everybody hates the police. And as you know, there were big confrontation. The police, a police trade union, organization, tried to organize in the Place de la République, very symbolic. They tried to organize a picket. It's a very
Comrade, can you
far
stop,
right.
please?
There were some demonstrators coming to prevent them. Marion Maréchal Le Pen went with them, but there were hundreds of people confronting them, and even a police car was burnt by the demonstrators.
Again, apologies to all the hands that went up. There were loads of you.
Hi, comrades. I'm Jan Majček from Czech Republic, from Prague. I would like to share the Czech experience. In Czech Republic, the situation is very complicated. The example, Czech Republic is well known for its anti-refugee attitudes, at least from official politicians. Let's have some examples. The Prime Minister from Social Democracy said that we will fight inside the European Union for more strict controls and limitation for refugees. The Minister of Interior Affairs, as well from the Social Democracy, said that we are ready to deploy an army on the Czech borders if necessary. The biggest opposition party, Communist Party of Czech Republic, said that they urge Czech government to protect the Czech nation against this inflow of the strange people, as they call the refugees. So in this atmosphere, when the racism coming from the main politicians, it's very complicated to fight against the fascism, especially when the only politicians who are for the refugees are the representatives of the liberal pro-austerity right-wing politicians. So to be for the refugees means, in a way, to be the allies with those people who put majority of the working class people in the very terrible conditions of the austerity for the last few years. It is terrible, but despite this complicated political situation, when there was demonstrations against refugees, the racist one, really nasty one, we had the contra-demonstration. Not always the bigger than the racist one, but still they were the demonstrations. So we organized, still trying to draw as much people as possible against those racists to win this battle and to show that to stand with refugees doesn't mean to be for austerity, because we had clear left-wing slogans. We were clear that we are against racism but against austerity as well.
Thanks, comrades. That was a great discussion. Before I bring the speakers to sum up, I'd just like to point out that there is a fantastic little pamphlet written by Leon Trotsky, Fascism, What It Is and How to Fight It, and that could be got from the stalls outside and bookmarks. Thank you. So in the same order again, Petros.
Okay. First of all, I don't think that the European Union is in danger from the bosses, from inside it. The European Union is in danger because of the worker struggles, because of the mass refugee movement, and because of the anti-fascist movement. This is the opposite force to the European Union in their own direction. So the danger that we can have a breakup from the nationalists and be in the same position as it happened in the Eastern European country, I think it's also to forget that when there was the collapse of the Eastern European countries, that collapse was not just, it was the collapse that opened the way for the nationalists. We have to remember that there were a whole mobilization by the workers in Eastern European countries. It was political revolutions against Stalinism, against state capitalism, and the absence of the left the way for reactionary processes in this country. So the same goes with European Union, and it is very important that the ruling class in Europe is faced with mass movement. And now it's not only Greece and what happened with the workers' resistance. We can see France. We can see that all this radicalization of the workers is there, and it is the way how we can shape the alternative against the dangers that, of course, exist. We don't close our eyes that there is danger from the fascist parties because racism, it's in the mainstream. It's in the main choices of the European Union. I mean, what happened last summer, it's very clear. People from below, they open the borders, and they move, even with NATO in the Aegean Sea, to close down the borders. So we have to take sides in this fight, but we can be optimistic, because even the picture that came here from the speakers and the floor, it's very clear that there is resistance. There are organized initiatives that are going around. Some of them are going for years, organizing the 21st of March, the last 3 or 4 years, and the last year, that was a big initiative. In the 23 and 24 of January this year, we organized a common demonstration from Calais to the Evros border, the border of Greece with Turkey. This was a very successful coordinated demonstration to send the message that we want open borders. And I think that the possibility to beat the fascists is there. There is workers' resistance against the austerity, and there are mass movements against racism and fascism to which we can build. Of course, there are difficulties. Of course, there are problems in the left and how they relate. But I think that the efforts of revolutionary socialists and all these mass movements, they can mobilize, they can unite hundreds of thousands and millions, and they stop them. There are reasons to be optimistic after what happened in Britain, and so I think that we can build. We invite everybody to join us on 15 and 16 of October for an international meeting against racism and fascism, and I think we're going to find ways how we can coordinate this European movement that is in building momentum now.
Okay, 3 quick points on the question of Brexit. I think we have to be very clear that we must not leave the anger at the establishment to the racists and to the far right. In Austria, we have the situation that when we are doing paper sales on the streets, we as revolutionary socialists were connected with the establishment. When people come to us, but you are like the liberals, and you are all like the defenders of the European Union, you are the defenders of this and that. And it was such a relief when we followed the Brexit campaign that there was Lexit. There was a left alternative to see that we can say, no, we oppose the European Union on a very internationalist base, on an anti-racist base, on an anti-austerity base. And what our answer to the crisis is what we have seen on the 19th of March. We were very proud to be part of an international movement in solidarity with refugees against the racism against Muslims and so on. And we had protests in, I think it was about 20 different countries all over the world. Even when the protests in some countries were small, we could be very proud to show this international solidarity. Second, small organizations, even if they are small, and we are not very that big in Austria, can make a huge difference when acting in the movement. Last year, just one more example, when Pegida tried to grip in Austria to build on the streets. At that time, when they thought they could do it, a branch did a paper sale in the front of a mosque. The police at that time were searching for terrorist Islamists in the mosques. And immediately when the police arrived, when we did our paper sale, there was solidarity between the Muslim community and our comrades, and we drove the police away. We were invited to have a tea, and then it ended up by having all the big unions of the Muslim community in Austria joining the protest against Pegida. In a few days, we had some kind of 7,000 people on the streets marching against Pegida. And I was told to stop. My third point is just, if you want to support the Austrian Antifa, you can, after the meeting, buy like this T-shirt. It says "Refugees Welcome" in German in the back. Thank you.
I want to add to the point of the importance of the question of the Brexit and fighting against fascism. I was in Austria on the weekend of the election, actually in May, on the conference of our comrades, and I listened to Van der Bellen, his speech in the radio. Van der Bellen is a left-wing candidate of the Green Party against the candidate of the fascists. Hofer is his name. And I was struck by his speech. It was a neoliberal, pro-EU speech. And he challenged the fascists on the question of being pro-European, pro-EU, or being against. That was the content of it. He didn't challenge him on racism. And I think he made the election a referendum on the EU. And he nearly lost it. And it's because of this speech. And because of speeches like this, he nearly loses it. It allows the fascists, in actual fact, to stand as a popular, pro-people party which stands for the poor people of Austria, for the working class of Austria. That's what it does, really. And that's how Austria will be a very important example for all of us. What is happening to a left which tries to stand on a pro-EU platform against fascism, which takes up this question, actually. Quite cleverly they do this. So this is one thing. The second thing is, there is one saying, one word of Marx, which I want to cite, because it's one of my favorite quotes, yeah. Who wants to do away with all forms of dirty oppression has to find its root in capitalist exploitation. So this really is a program for us, which means that when it comes to women's oppression or it comes to racism, it means that we have to see that the roots of it are in capitalism and exploitation. But we must not interpret it as Sarah Wagenknecht does, to say, if we fight the roots of oppression, we don't need to have to fight racism. This does not, if the one does not make the other one superfluous. It means there are at least two sides, or more sides to class struggle. The class struggle against oppression and the class struggle against exploitation are two sides of one class struggle, and one is not less important than the others. They have to come together.